Recitation. What is it and why are we including it in our homeschool? Hello and welcome back to Raising Arrows Mama. My name is Heather, Mama to 8, and today I wanted to do a quick deep dive into recitation. For the next few weeks, I hope to come back and share more about other language arts components in Charlotte Mason education. But I thought I'd start with recitation because it's a fairly easy one to start and to get into a good rhythm for. So, what is recitation exactly? Recitation is the art of speaking beautifully. That's really all it is. You might think of it as a speech component, but when you practice recitation the Charlotte Mason way, you are actually diving into so many more components of language arts study. What recitation is not is memorization. This is not a chance for rote memorizing speeches and things like that. Over the course of the time, your child probably will memorize most, if not all, of their portion of recitation, but it is not the purpose of recitation. Recitation is the art of speaking beautifully. And to tell you a little bit more, I'm going to grab my Charlotte Mason Home Education Volume 1. If you're looking online, it's page 222. Amplified Online has it for free. You can read it. And basically, it's a very, very short section. This is basically all it is. And Charlotte Mason touches on it. And you might think, well, it's in home education, so that's really only for children up till 9. No, I will prove to you that it does go beyond that. But this is the fine art of beautiful and perfect speaking. The child should speak beautiful thoughts so beautifully with such delicate rendering of each nuance of meaning that he becomes to the listener the interpreter of the author's thought. That is the whole purpose of recitation and what its meaning is. And you may think, okay, that's great. I want them to speak beautifully. Do I really need to do that, or can I take them to a speech class? What is it that they need? And one of the best examples I can come up with that I thought of is actually not what you read in the Little House on the Prairie books. You hear about them doing recitations often, and I think that they did do it with a very dramatic flair and very well, but that's not what you get necessarily. You get them doing a lot of repetitive things, and that is not, we're not just doing drill and kill, we're not just trying to do a rote memorization. We want to express what the author actually had. And I think this excerpt from Understood Betsy kind of lets you know really well. So she's talking with her aunt and uncle, and he says, "Oh yeah, yeah, read to us something from Scott," meaning Sir Walter Scott. And at least that was the way it sounded to Betsy because he asked for the Stag at Eve, and she was like, "Stag at Eve, what is that?" So they found the right portion, and she began reading. The stag at eve had drunk his fill, where danced the moon on Monan's rill. She began, and it was as though she had stepped into a boat and was swept off by a strong current. She did not know what all the words meant, and she could not pronounce a good many of the names, but nobody interrupted to correct her, and she read on and on, steadied by the strongly marked rhythm drawn forward swiftly from one clanging, sonorous rhyme to another. Uncle Henry nodded his head in time to the rise and fall of her voice, and now and then stopped his work to look at her with bright, eager old eyes. He knew some of the pieces by heart, evidently, for once in a while his voice would join the little girl's for a couplet or two, and they chanted together thus. A moment listened to the cry that thickened at the chase as the chase drew nigh. Then, as the headmost foes appeared, with one brave bound the copse he cleared. At the last line, Uncle Henry flung his arms out wide, and the child felt as though the deer had made his great leap there before her eyes. That is what we're going for recitation. Not necessarily my reading, but that experience where the poem, the Bible piece, the essay, the speech, whatever it is, comes alive to the listeners. And that is what you're looking for in recitation. You want something that is truly beautiful, that really just speaks to your audience. And you look a lot at Charlotte Mason's works and things that she is having the children do, and it is to prepare them to be a better person for others, to give to others, to do for others. And that's really what recitation is. It is this reading for others. And you can go about it a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of curriculums out there that do this for you. But it really, you don't need a curriculum. Right? You don't need anything at all to do recitation and to do it well. Now, I'm not saying I'm an expert at this, but we have been doing it for a while, and I feel like this is one thing that we've gotten under our belt, at least for the younger years. There's a few things I hope to add more for my older children, which I'll talk about in a minute. If you are looking more specifics on um, recitation, please go check out a delectable education podcast. And I don't know the numbers, but I will link below a blog post I have where I have everything linked and all the resources. And they have three different posts. They have one about recitation in general, which just goes over home education. They have an immersion, which gives you a sampling of an older grades recitation lesson. And then they also have recitation tactics, which is their most recent one. And that one will walk you through some steps that are outlined in a parents review article and book that was written during Charlotte Mason's time about recitation. And you can see that article as well. I have that linked in that blog post as well. Um, and it goes through some do's and don'ts, and you can take them or leave them. I honestly don't think that there's like cut and dry, you need to do this. There are some tips that are helpful. And things like we don't want to make them feel like they're on a stage, even though that they will probably, depending on what you're part of, maybe your co or something, they may be performing this piece. But we want to make sure that they're not put on a stage and that they're doing it for that they are truly trying to express what the author wrote to an audience is what the point is. So how do I make that happen? Let me go through some really quick steps and examples of what I'm doing with my kids this term. And I have in that blog post that I link, I also link all my printables that I'm using for my kids this term, as well as some from previous terms also. So there's a lot of information and it's all there. So let's start with Form 1 because that's the easiest, right? Now, if you go to Nancy Kelly, also, this is linked, Sage Parnassus, she has an outline help. It's a free recitation help that shows you what Child Mason did for each grade level and what selections you might want to choose. It is a little overabundant for my personal taste. We just can't get all those in every term. And so I like to keep it very simple because I have a lot of kids and not a lot of time. So we tend to stick to 4 recitation pieces per term. That's for 12 weeks. They will do the same 4. The very first one, we always do an Old Testament recitation, a New Testament recitation, and then we do a poem. And then the fourth one is our kind of oddball. Sometimes it's a speech, sometimes it's a government document, like we did the Declaration of Independence portions. This term we're doing Shakespeare. Um, it just really depends what you want. We kind of do a fill in the blank there for different things. Other suggestions would be just to have a psalm every time and also hymns to recite rather than sing them. And there are several suggestions on that Nancy Kelly post as well. And I believe Charlotte Mason had like 6 to 10 different things that they're doing. But it also tells you the length, which I find very helpful to know what I want for my children to do and gauge their readiness. So, like I said, my Form 1 student. So her first one is an Old Testament selection. Now hers I actually took from Amplified Online, who has recitation choices now on their blog. They didn't have that in years past, so that's exciting. But we are going to do this. Ruth is her middle name, and she loves the book of Ruth. And so this will actually be a familiar verse for her, but it is something that she has some words that are a little strange because we do use King James. And so she is going to work on this one day a week. So today is our first day back at school. And so she will, we didn't do this quite yet. We're going to do it after a quiet time, but I will read it to her. And then we will start working on the first little bit, just to the comma. And then next week, I'll read it again. And then we'll add it a little bit longer. And we'll keep going until we have it all. And then after that, it will just be a factor of her reading it to me. Now, by that time, she should be able to read all these words because I'm going to be reading them with her. If your child is not able to read, that's okay. I'll talk about that in a minute as well. And then on Tuesdays in our family, we do New Testament recitation. And this again is a familiar verse, so she's going to memorize it quickly because she already has most of it memorized. But we're going to work on the intonation, the pausing, and speed at which you speak, volume at which you speak, and all of those. And then Wednesday, we will have our poetry, and this is our family poet for the year that we are studying, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And so she's going to do this one, and we will go about the same process with each new recitation piece for my Form 1 student. If my child was not able to read, like she was not able to read very much last term, I gave her familiar passages, and we did just that, where she did have to listen to me and then read it. But I tried not to do too much gestures or anything where she was going to mimic that of me, but she was only going to remember the words. Um, And there are a lot of good nursery rhymes. Maybe pick one that your child isn't so familiar with, but has a good cadence. Things like that are great first recitation pieces. You can do much harder ones. It is perfectly possible, but I like to choose something simple and fun. There was a little turtle who lived in a box is a great choice for a first one, and my kids usually do that around kindergarten age just because they enjoy it. And then that's all we do. We just read it every day. And I'm not looking for them to have it memorized, though, like I said, this one will. Those are easy and short for a 6-year-old. Um, but my point is that she reads every word correctly, that she pronounces it well, enunciates, that she projects her volume, that she is able to pause when she needs to and does not rush through. And so I'm looking for kind of those good speech patterns in her poem. Maybe she can add some actions, which that one maybe not, I don't know. But that would be up to her as she reads it. When she did the little turtle, when she snatched at the minnow, it snatched at the flea, caught the minnow, it caught me, but it didn't catch me. She got very dramatic about that. This one maybe not. Some lean more towards that way than others, and it's okay that their volume might change throughout the poem as long as it reflects what's being said. So that's what I do for Form 1. That's my first, second, and third graders. Like I said, my first grader's doing a little bit shorter portions that she usually has wrote and memorized within about a month. My second and third graders might have a little bit longer portions, never more than 10 lines. I try to keep it still fairly short because I really am not working on them memorizing the portion. I'm working on them speaking it beautifully and well. And so that's what my second and third graders will do. Then my form two, which is fourth through sixth graders, they follow the same pattern in our family. And so we have an Old Testament selection, and then they have a New Testament selection, and then they have a poem, and then they have a Shakespeare. So, like I said, what we're doing this time around. So let me find her portion. So my second graders is only 2 verses, but it's quite lengthy, as you can see. And so she, or fourth graders, sorry, Form 2, fourth grade. And so she's working on this. We did it today for the first time, and I did not read it to her just because it is a familiar passage, but that's what I normally do. And then she should know all the words. And so today she read it through, and we had a few mistakes in pronunciation. So we just corrected those as we went. And then next week on Monday, she'll read the same section to me. And then I might correct maybe her pausing, or I maybe still stuck on pronunciation, whatever it may be. And so we'll make those small corrections, a little correction every week, one or two at a time as we progress through. And then she has all of my big kids, because she's 9, will be doing these 10 verses from First John as we work through memorizing First John. Or not memorizing, reciting First John. So next will be First John 2, chapter 2. And then they each have a poem. So here's my Form 2's poem. You can see it's a little bit lengthier. But again, they have a normal cadence that they're going to follow, and she's going to pick that up over time. But we're going to start out with pronunciation. I always start there. We work on enunciating. Then we work on some of those other things like intonation, projection, and other speech patterns. Now, one thing that is different for me that I want to do for my older kids, which would be Form 3 and up. My older kids I give them kind of a selection of poems to choose from, and my oldest always chooses something really hard. She's going to try Paul Revere's Ride, the entire poem, before now and the end of the school year. So we'll see how that goes. But we want to work a little bit more, not just on the enunciating and pronunciating, but also some of the speech patterns. And to do that, we're going to be doing some mouth breathing and tongue mouth exercises, which if you go to the Delectable Education Recitation Immersion, Nicole Williams shares a beautiful free document that you can use to go through some of those exercises. And so it's going to be simple. None of this takes more than 10 minutes a day. Okay. For my younger kids, like I said, 10 minutes a day is just the reading through, and then I'm making those things. Form 3 and above, I'm going to break that up into them reading it, or we'll first do about 5 to 10 minutes of breathing or mouth exercises, and then they will read. And that's pretty much it. Now, as we get closer to the end of the term, sometimes I do have them go in front of a mirror and do that to notice certain movements, things like that. But I don't make it too extreme. So what I wanted to share though was in school education at the back, she shared some sample lessons. And the one that they have for reading here is for a 13-year-old. So this would be form three. And they're spending 25 minutes in recitation. You wouldn't do that every day, but sometimes. And they begin with practice with reading exercises. Then they practice some vowel and consonant sounds, followed by reading a passage. And then like the teacher reads the passage. And the ask for a narration, a mental picture of what they saw, and then they have the children narrate what they felt from the story, what they saw, what they imagined, and then they give the passage to the child to actually read. And so that's kind of what Nicole shows in her immersion program. And like I said, again, that would be form three and above, and it would not be daily. That would be once a week that you would have this more intense focus on speech and speech patterns and breathing, and then the other days of the week, you're still just working through those recitation passages. There'll be one day a week where you take your recitation a little bit separate from the others, and that's what I'm hoping to incorporate more this year, as I do have a Form 4 and Form 3 this year. So that is what we do. And like I said, it's 5-10 minutes total for every day. So what are the benefits of this? Like I said at the beginning, there are many. It is not just that they end up memorizing piece. That's great. But they learn how to speak and to speak properly, which is often missing. I don't know about you, but I struggle with talk to text because I do not enunciate and things like that. But it helps with them with projects or speeches or things they may do future in life. They know how to do that. But also, as your children are doing that, they're starting to notice vocabulary. They're going to notice spelling because you now have to focus on how to pronounce that and see the phonics of that word. You're going to have children even start to notice some of those grammar and punctuation things as they learn. Oh, I take a pause here because there's a punctuation mark. They will start to notice those things. They're probably not going to verbalize that to you, but they will notice it, and it will show as they approach those things later in life in grammar and spelling and things like that. So those are some of the benefits. So does this actually work? Yes, it does. I've been doing this for many years with my kids. Very simple. Just I choose pieces based on kind of the whim of the way, my way. Sometimes I choose it like our poet. I choose from whoever we're studying. Scripture, I choose something pertinent to the time, or I just choose something from a list, like at Amblesite Online. And the other pieces are different. Like I said, we're doing Shakespeare. We're going to be reading Julius Caesar, and so I just chose two portions from that, again from Amblesite Online, and that's how I do it. How do I know it works? Because a couple of years ago, we started a Charlotte Mason picnic where we asked locals who are homeschoolers to come and showcase whatever they want. They can do a recitation, they can do a musical piece, they can share handicrafts, they can share their narration notebooks, their maps, whatever it is they want. And it has been a beautiful time. The very first time, several of my girls, because we were the ones hosting it, so I kind of forced them in, but my oldest really rose to the occasion. At 12, she took it upon herself to memorize Lady of Shalott by Alfred Lord Tennyson, which is not a simple, small poem. It is quite lengthy. And she worked on it. And she was concerned about certain things and maybe didn't want to take direction from me. So I did recordings of her and I put her in front of the mirror so she could notice those things on her own. And come picnic time, she did a beautiful job. Not just my kids, my friend, her two sons did a duet. They did a recitation together where some they said together and some they did side by side. They even dressed in costume. And they did a beautiful reading of a Whittier poem. And it was wonderful. Last year we had several kids come and many did recitations. And there was one little boy who was just like, he was so on fire after listening to everyone else that after they were done, he's like, I've got one. And his mom's like, oh, you do? He jumped up and he did a beautiful recitation. Maybe a bit fast, but he did a great job sharing his poems, sharing his scriptures. And it was because he was inspired by seeing these other children do it. And so I know it works. I know it has benefits. And I know that it is encouraging to our children, whether or not you do a showcase like that with other people or with family. Um, Even just have them. If you look at Charlotte Mason's exams, a lot of times it's choose father chooses a poem to read, and it's not always, it may not be the poem that they worked on. You could have them choose that, but father could pick any poem from anywhere, and they were supposed to get up and read it. because they've been practicing the skill and they should be able to do that. And so it does have benefits and it brings so much joy to them. It may not in the moment. Promise some my kids are not perfect angels. We have those days where nobody wants to do anything, but it is a beautiful and wonderful concept and it does teach way more than you think it will teach in your language arts skills. All of Charlotte Mason's language arts skills are all meshed together, so they seem quite simple, but they really do work all in tandem. And so I do encourage you not to skip recitation, not to overcomplicate it. Start with a poem, start with a piece of scripture, and just work on it a few minutes every day, and you will see some beautiful blessings. So thank you so much for joining me. If you have more questions about recitation, please check out the link below to my blog post, which really is just resources. That's really all the blog post is. There's no fancy talk from me in there. Is a list of resources and printables and other people who are wiser than I sharing about recitation. And if not, you don't find your answer there, please leave a comment below and I will be happy to try to direct you and help you in any way that I can. Thank you so much for watching and have a blessed day.